All right, we are live. I want to welcome everybody back to the Best Under 5 here at the LONGBOX CRUSADE NETWORK. Our, for now, quarterly show, or we're talking about movies that we maybe kind of like. That when I say we, that includes you, the audience, because we're now into the point. We had our premiere episode. We covered Fangs from 2002 last time. Now we're at the point where we're just taking suggestions from the audience, the things that they want us to see highlighted, and we're bringing them on the show. I am your host, Jarrod, the art sale artist. I am joined by my co-host, is Black Belt Chris. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you, Jarrod.
And we are going to talk some Jaws 3D from 1983 today. Quick shout out to Mr. Matt Passo, Auburn Elvis, and A.U. Kathy, who are already in the chat. So travel back with us to 1983 and get out your glasses that has one side red and one side blue. And let's get into Jaws 3D. Now, let's get a quick background. See, on the premiere episode on Fangs, you got a kind of a quick background on sort of how I view movies, which is a little more kindly than Chris. But Chris still has a love for these kind of movies as well.
It seriously depends on the movie. I mean.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. So what I wanted to do is just real quick, sort of your history with Jaws 3D, and mine's fairly brief. I have a bit of an affectation for Jaws 3D because this is the first Jaws movie I ever saw. I was
in theaters, or
no, I was babysitting some kids, and I got on VHS. This would have been about 88, 89, and this was the first Jaws movie I ever saw. So it has a bit of a special place in my heart. And since then, I've probably watched it, I'd say 3, 4, maybe 5 times, and sort of that's my history with Jaws. What about you, Chris?
I saw this. I did not see it in theaters, unfortunately. I wish I had, because I remember what movie it was I saw that summer in the theaters, but I remember Jaws 3 had been in it because they had painted the theater with waves, like fake wave, like just as white, blue, and darker blue waves on the sides of the walls. Yeah, my first exposure to Jaws was the original on, of course, TBS and TNT, because they played it like nonstop. It was like every other week. One of those two was on. And then they moved on to Jaws 3D, which is the first time I had seen this one on TV. And, ever since then, I'll watch it anytime I find it. I have all 4 movies on DVD. So I have probably seen this a couple dozen times easily.
Nice. Now you just gotta go find the unofficial Jaws 5 Cruel Jaws. I don't know if you've dug that deep yet, but I watched it not too long ago.
The Italian Jaws knockoff.
Yeah,
I think. Yes, I've seen that, and oh boy, that's something else.
It is something. Yeah. I want to go to the chat real quick and just say hello to Jim Meal. Also joined some of our other folks in the chat. Auburn Elvis sounds off and says he saw it in the theater.
Saw it in the theater. So did Kathy.
Yeah, she said, I saw it in the theater. I'm old, she said. And it's the reason that she knows who Beth Armstrong is.
I had to look up and see what else she was in. Apparently, she has a fairly prolific TV career.
Oh, okay. I knew I'd seen her. I knew I'd seen her around. Yeah. Well, that is cool. So that's sort of got our backstories here. Like I said, I definitely have a bit of an affectation to it because not only was it my first Jaws, and I was babysitting some kids and they went to bed, and I was like, looking at the VHS tapes on the people's house that I was in, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch something a little scary because I was like 12, 13 years old. You're dabbling in scary. Oh, watch this. Yeah. And so like it was legitimately like a little scary for me to watch it. So yeah. Oh, Beth Armstrong, not Beth Armstrong.
Beth, yes.
People in the chat will keep us straight, but it was the people in the chat that led us astray. So I don't know what.
I like Aubrey. Yeah, she was big during the HBO era.
Okay. All right. So, this is Best Under 5. And so, full disclosure, if I didn't mention it already, this movie, Jaws 3D, currently sits at a 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb. We will tell you guys later on whether we think that is low, whether we think that is high, whether we think it is accurate. Spoiler alert, I think it's insanely low. But we'll get back, to that. You did a little digging on some other ratings on it, didn't you, Chris?
I did some digging. Yeah, the Rotten Tomatoes score is 11%, which and that's I believe that was the critics score. The viewer score wasn't much higher. I think it was maybe 17, 18. So wow. I'm like, wow. But yet I am apparently the people that love or kind of love / like Jaws 3D are all over at IMDb.
I guess it has almost
so at
double,
least boosted up to almost 40%.
Wow. Okay. So that's how the public views it. Now let's just kind of enter the part of the show where we start or sort of breaking it down. You know, what are some things we really liked about it? Maybe some things that we thought, maybe some things I won't even say didn't like, but maybe could identify as the reason why others don't like it. Because peek behind the scenes, Chris and I talked before recording. We both like this movie. Okay, let me just be clear. We both like it.
Yes.
In fact, I went so far as to say on social media when I rewatched it this week, Thursday night, I was over at Crusaders Club member Ezra Gallo's place, and we watched it, and we both agreed. Ezra and I both agreed. This is, and listen carefully to what I'm about to say. This is my favorite Jaws movie to watch. I'm not saying it's the best Jaws movie. Clearly, that is Steven Spielberg's masterpiece, number one. It's the best, but this is my favorite one to watch. It's very akin to me saying something like, I fully recognize Sean Connery is the best James Bond, but I like Timothy Dalton. That's kind of what I'm saying here. So that's my cards on the table. I just find this one really fun to watch. So that's kind of me coming out of the gate saying the biggest plus of all to me, we'll get down into some of the details, but the biggest plus overall is I just think it's a fun watch. It's everything you like about the first one with the shark and the danger, but it's like it's in SeaWorld. Like there's plenty of people to eat, and there's a lot of other cool visual things going on. Take it from there, Chris. You can give us your overarching. You can start getting detail.
You're definitely right. Yeah, you are right. This is my favorite Jaws movie to watch, but you are right. It is not the best. The best is number one. You can't do any better than that. This is the one you put on where you just want some background noise and you just want something silly to glance up at every now and then.
Right? Yes.
Because it is just crazy. I do like the idea of the shark loose in the amusement park / sea park, water park, whatever you want to call it, and but it feels out of place as a Jaws movie, but as a shark movie, it's great. It's a entry into the Jaws, the Jaws franchise. It doesn't quite fit.
How some people like they use the phrase like this is going south, like that means things are going bad. Have you ever noticed that Jaws movies literally geographically go south? Jaws 1 and 2 are in New England, right. Jaws 3 is in Florida, and Jaws 4 is in the Bahamas.
I'm just glad that they didn't pull the Jaws 4 plot point where the shark followed her to the
It's personal. You
personal.
said something though. You just said something that I latched onto, and it really connected to something that Albernello said in the chat. I want to pull up what he said in the chat. I believe it was this one. This movie has a lot of elements that make you think it could be a hit. Solid cast, decent story. Special effects are trying very hard. I think that kind of ties into what you'd said about it feels weird in the franchise. Because it's the first one that's very different. 1 and 2 very similar. 3 becomes very different.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that maybe people came down on it, and maybe still do to this day, you've seen the score in '83, is do you think maybe it was a bit of oversaturation? Like we had Jaws, and this one feels a little zanier. We mentioned that, like maybe they were trying too hard. So in the moment, people were like, "I'm sick of this whole Jaws thing. You guys are trying too hard." But in retrospect, we could be like, "Look at this awesomely bonkers movie."
well, we look at it now. Yeah, it's bonkers. And I think as I was doing some background research for it, I mean, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. And if you want to get into a lot of background information, I'm going to throw out the guys from Jason and D from the You Can't Be Serious podcast, Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast, because they did a deep dive on this one.
Deep dive. That's funny.
Oh yeah, yes, that was unintended. But they did a really good deep dive on this, and we're just kind of talking about what we love about it. And I'm just going to hit some highlights of some things I picked up from them, and just in my quick research, like you've got it was released July 22nd, 1983, amidst and I didn't know this until I did some looking, amidst the flurry of other 3D movies that were coming out at the time. One of them you and I both love because it is absolutely bonkers. Treasure of the Four Crowns.
Oh my gosh, that movie is insane.
Came out in 83.
And it has the goal to be called Treasure of the Four Crowns, and it doesn't feature four crowns.
I think there's just the one.
It's definitely 3 or less.
I got to go back and rewatch it.
Is this also the time of the Jason Voorhees 3D movie?
Yeah, within a year or two. And then there was Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone.
Right, Space Hunter.
Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin, and those are the big ones. And I think 2 of those have ratings lower than 5. I know Treasure of the Four Crowns does.
Soon to be featured on Best Under
Fodder.
5.
Fodder for the podcast.
That's right. One of you listeners out there, write that down so you can suggest it when we put out our next call to arms here. You're basically saying what Kathy's saying in the chat, by the way. She said could have been trying a bit too hard with the 3D element.
I think it was, and I will get to that later because some of their 3D choices are very odd. Let's see, where are my notes here? It grossed almost 13.5 million on its opening weekend, and it has achieved a total lifetime worldwide gross of 88 million. And we've got Louis Gossett Jr. as Calvin Bouchard as the park owner, Dennis Quaid as Mike Brody, Leah Thompson in her first major role as Kelly, Bess Armstrong as Catherine, and then everybody's favorite from Manimal, Simon McCorkindale as Philip Fitzroy. I mean, he's got a crazy last name, through the Actors Guild, and his name of the movie is kind of out there.
McCorkindale is really fun to say.
It is. It is.
Yeah, you make a great point too, and that was going to be one of my sort of highs as we get down into the pieces and parts of the movie. It's definitely the cast. It's Dennis Quaid and Lou Gossett Jr. To me are the really strong parts of it. Yeah, McCorkindale is great for what he's doing. It's neat to see Leah Thompson, sort of the pre-Back to the Future Leah Thompson in this. Bess Armstrong was good as well. I think I just gravitate more towards Dennis Quaid and Lou Gossett just because they had such big careers beyond.
They were known. Yeah, they were known at the time too, especially Louis Gossett Jr. I'm trying to remember if this was before or after Iron Eagle.
I think it was right before. I want to say this is 83. I don't want to say Iron Eagle's 85 or 86.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
But am I crazy, or is Louis Gossett Jr.'s Cajun accent really appear when he wants to seem charming and only when he wants to seem charming? I swear that Cajun accent comes and goes in this movie.
He did a better job with an accent in The Deep.
But God bless him. He's great in this. He's great in this.
Which actually, The Deep is also another Peter Benchley film.
You're absolutely right. Book. It is a Peter Benchley.
And we were talking questionable 3D effects. There's a couple of spots in there where a moray eel is featured prominently as a 3D effect. As they're coming through the cave. Yes. And then there was another one in the waters. They were swimming around. I think trying to remember, fix the pump or get to fix the tube, the leaking tube. Something. And I'm thinking, okay, am I overthinking this, or is this supposed to be a nod to The Deep? I'm thinking, I think I'm going too deep on this. This movie's not that deep.
So you know what? You just mentioned the 3D effects, and since we're diving into the nuts and bolts of this movie, they did make some interesting 3D effects. I noticed my big takeaway from the 3D effects was they like to do, like a lot of 3D movies I've seen, they like to be sort of abrupt and scare you with them. And most of these are pretty slow moving,
These
like
were
sort of
slow.
let the
Yes.
audience absorb this 3D moment effect. I'm thinking, of course, the fish and the hand. I think there's part with a hand. And
yeah.
even when Jaws busts through the window, he's kind of taking his time with it.
Taking a sweet time, but I got a theory. I got a funny theory on that one. Just
Oh, you told me you wanted to talk
later,
a bit about these 3D effects. So here's your time, man. What do you got?
The 3D effects, I think the ones that looked good were, you know, like the one at the end was okay, you know, with the floating jaw and the, you know, and the floating pieces of
the guts
of the shark itself. Yeah, you're right. The slower ones were good, and the was the shots of that little underwater submersible that they were in. I think those, like you said, slow moving. Those were the good ones. Probably that the spear gun, that was another good one. It would have been fast, but it lends itself to it.
Yeah.
Some of the questionable ones are the one where they're doing some welding. I can't remember if it's underwater or if they're in the shop trying to get the patch ready for the tunnel. I'm thinking, why do you want to turn a welding shot into 3D? You know, okay.
All right.
And then when they're filling up the syringe with the with the tranquilizer, you know, he fills it up, and it is blatantly obvious that the 3D effect is coming because he literally holds the syringe and squirts it right onto the camera lens or the glass that was over the camera lens.
Now, am I crazy when they used a little submersible vehicle and they sort of did that 3D sort of drive by
across this? Yeah.
Like I felt like there was some sort of a masking problem on that one. Like there was parts of it that were flickering in and out.
Yes,
of frame as well.
Yeah,
and I was like,
yeah,
well,
it
you know, it's
looked like
1983. They're doing the best.
and that lagoon, I mean, if you look at the size of things, I've been to SeaWorld where they filmed this. I've walked through the tunnels that they use for all those underwater shots and been into the taking a peek in the restaurant there that they used for Neptunes, and then and also been to the ski show lagoon. They there's no way that lagoon is that deep, because if you kind of take things and look at them in perspective, you know, that's supposed to be a 35-foot shark in that in that intake tunnel. Like, yeah. So that means that lagoon has probably got to be 90 feet deep. Just looking at the scale of those things, and I'm thinking, yeah, there's no way that lagoon out at SeaWorld is 90 feet deep. That's not happening.
You know, we've mentioned SeaWorld a couple of times, and that was one of the more shocking things to me upon my rewatch. Is I had forgotten that it's officially SeaWorld. It's not like Ocean Land or Water Park Place or anything like that. It is SeaWorld. And I was just flabbergasted that SeaWorld would literally sign off on putting their name on this. You know, like, this is not the world's best advertising, because like it's about a shark eating people in
it's shark eating people in your park. Yeah, do you really want to use this to highlight your park?
That one struck me as like, that is odd.
I also don't remember. Now they may have in the 80s. You may have been able to do this, but I don't remember bumper boats when we went there in the early 2000s, and I also don't remember being able to swim at SeaWorld. I don't know if that was ever a thing or not. Maybe somebody listening in could tell us that maybe went there when they were a kid, because I don't remember seeing that anywhere as we were walking through the park. Maybe that was filmed somewhere else.
You mentioned the bumper boat, so I definitely want to talk about that for a minute. Like, it just cracks me up that every time that I can't remember which Brody kid is which, but the one who was definitely traumatized. He's like, nah, I don't do the water.
That's the younger of the two.
Right.
I can't think of his name. I mean, Mike's the older one.
Right. So not Mike Brody, the other Brody. Yeah. Leah Thompson's right there to be like, come on, man. Come on. Let's go. Let's get in the water. And like, he's like, I don't want to do the bumper boats. And she's like, oh, come on. It'll be fun. And that is literally where she almost dies and gets like, I was like, this poor guy.
And this just dawned on me. You were talking about, she's trying to get him in the water there into the bumper boats. I think that whole skinny dipping scene at night was definitely a nod to the original Jaws.
Yes, certainly.
Because remember the girl and the guy that run off to the beach, and if you're a fan of the Jaws franchise, you're probably thinking, "Oh, she's gonna bite it. She's gonna get it right there," and the younger Brody's gonna be traumatized from this. But I do find it funny in that scene that they try to excuse their skinny dipping as Kelly works at the park, and the younger Brody's like, "Oh, it's okay, my brother works here."
My brother works here. Yeah.
Like that. That's not gonna fly.
I'm just watching that scene and laughing because I'm like, he's got that definite fear of the water, and we know why. He's been through 2 other movies where it didn't work out so good. And like she gets him to go out there for sort of the skinny dipping romantic thing, and you're like, oh, she's helping him get over his fear of the water. But we as the viewers know that fear of the water is gonna be exceptionally healthy, and he needs to hold on to that. It just goes nowhere good at all in the end. So like this poor guy, he's just getting over his trauma because she got him to go out there for the romantic moment. He's just getting over. He's like, okay, maybe the ocean's not so bad. Next thing you know, bumper boats and the sharks involved.
Yeah.
Speaking of sharks,
yes,
I swear that maybe I have a piece of my brain missing, probably more than one. Every time I watch this movie is the time that I remember that there's 2 sharks in the movie.
Yes, there are 2 sharks in the movie, and I love how they say that Catherine is saying that the mother gave birth in the park, and I'm thinking great white sharks don't have the gestational period of a xenomorph. They can grow to full size in a matter of days. This is not how this works.
Yeah, I
like what Auburn is saying. Auburn is saying right here. Yeah, this always cracks me up. I like how Jaws knocked the gate off the track. Then when the dude's fixing it, Jaws knocks it back on the track when he kills the guy. He replaced his divot. Yes,
that's right. Jaws cares about the whole thing.
It's a flimsy gate, and well, and it also bothers me. He's talking about the gate that that gate is supposed to keep all the fish in, specifically the bigger fish, but yet you're going to let the dolphins out into the lagoon. I'm thinking, they could pull a Free Willy right over that gate,
Sure enough. Now that we've talked about the gate, though, I do want to give this movie a bit of a plus. I really like the scene where the big muscly guy, I can't remember his name, but he goes down to fix the gate. Yes, and it's very tense. There's a few things that kind of scare him. And then he does get eaten, but like I really sort of like that whole through plot of them like, where is this guy? Is he drunk? His girlfriend's looking for him and all this. Like I feel like they got more mileage out of that cleverly, because I think as the audience we're invested in when are they going to find out. We the audience know what happened to him, but like they're finding out. And I thought it had a good bit of sort of audience interaction, tension, and engagement to it. So I was like, not bad. Jaws 3, I like that part of it.
Yeah, we know what's happening in the park, but everybody in the movie doesn't. They kind of unlike in Jaws and Jaws 2, it's like everybody at the park or everybody in Amity figures it out pretty quick that it's a shark. But and in the park in Jaws 3, they don't figure it out until they finally find the guy.
Yeah, it's I would say almost called a murder mystery. But of course, we know it's not a mystery, but it's fun watching them catch up with that. Certainly,
yes.
One of the other things I had in my notes, which cracks me up every time, is when Jaws sort of like the real Jaws, the big shark shows up.
Yes.
It's like the people are in sort of the underground tunnel system, and they're getting the tour, and they're like, oh my gosh, this giant shark shows up, and he kind of bangs the thing and cracks it, and the water starts. I love the tour guide girl who is like, she's totally like, all right, everybody walk casually, we're going to be fine, all that. And then literally seconds later, she is full blown sprinting
for the spoke, the center of the spoke there. Where all
she's together. Like elbows up, knees up, like go as fast as she can.
Get you guys, I'm saving myself.
But she does redeem herself, because when they do get trapped in there, she does a great job of keeping the level head,
keeping everybody calm and staying. I was
like that was probably not the highest part of her job requirement, but man, she did. She like they never thought that was going to come up, but I thought she did pretty good.
Yeah, and what was it? That scene right there? My son, let's see, what does he say? Because the first time we watched this movie a couple of years ago, the first words out of his mouth when the shark hits the tube and it starts leaking all over the place, he goes, man, that's some shoddy construction. He goes, the shark just boops the tube and it starts leaking everywhere.
I guess that's Dennis Quaid's fault, because he's the engineer, for that.
Oh, you're right. We can blame Dennis for that. Yeah, we can blame Mike. Yeah.
Auburn Elvis, by the way, starting off the chat, said the scene trying to get the water skiers to come back to shore is very tense, and it's his favorite scene of the movie. And I agree, that was a good one.
The first time I saw it, I kept expecting, I was expecting a bloodbath.
I think it would have played better with a bit of a bloodbath, but I was reminded when we watched this and sort of looked up, this movie is rated much like the first ones. It's rated PG.
Oh, this one still falls as a. Did they have PG-13? No, PG-13 hadn't come in at this point.
Yeah, I think PG-13 shows up in 84.
84 when Temple of Doom and Gremlins hit the scene.
Temple of Doom, Gremlins, what was the other? Red Dawn.
Red Dawn, I believe.
And Flamingo Kid were some of the earlier ones to sort of get mixed into that whole.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one's PG.
Yep. Like my son says, when the first time I showed him Jaws, and I didn't realize this either. We watched Jaws one time, and we let the credits roll. It's a 70s movie, so credits are short. And blue screen comes up. This motion picture has been rated PG by the MPAA. We both look at each other and go, "This was PG?"
Yeah.
I had been all my life, I kid you not, all my life up until 2 years ago, thinking this movie Jaws was rated R.
No, man, this is back in the day. This is why us Gen Xers are the way we are, my friend. These movies were rated PG. To me, this one was a little bit surprising. I think maybe if it got released now, it probably would have been PG-13.
I think you get a PG-13, yeah.
Especially, I think, around when they did find the muscular dude's body.
Yes, that would definitely rate it PG-13.
Yeah, it was pretty.
I think the OG Jaws would have gotten a PG-13 rating too.
Probably just terror elements and some of the more graphic shots. They don't linger on them a whole heck of a lot, but yeah. So we've hit some of the highs that there was some legitimate tension, some fun with the 3D. 3D was a mixed bag. Lou Gossett Jr., I think we both like. Thumbs up on him.
Yes,
Dennis Quaid, it's Dennis Quaid. He's always fun to watch. He's good
and very sweaty.
Yes, he had some underarm sweat, a lot going on.
I wonder if that was due to the fact that he was like high on coke for the entire movie.
Hey, we weren't there. We don't know.
Well, he fully where was he? Fully admits to that in an interview. I think it was in the. Oh God, where did I stumble upon it? Yeah, Dennis Quaid states in an interview in 2015 that he was high in every scene. Cocaine.
Puzzle pieces are starting to come together.
Wow. Now it all makes sense.
Albert Elvis made a funny joke in the chat talking about Dennis Quaid was a mediocre souvenir, but absolutely balling ring grabber with a bent pole. And I'm glad he mentioned that.
I'm going to get to that. Yes, I want to get to that.
I am so glad he mentioned that because, in all the Jaws movies, like the best way to remember them is how Jaws gets killed, right? Mm-hmm. We all know, the first one, smile, you son of a bitch. And then we're all pretty aware that the second one, I think, is electrocution. And this third one, with the bent pole, he pulls the grenade that the guy wasn't ever supposed to have because the guy's half his torso is still in Jaws.
Yeah. And yes. Simon just, he kind of, or Fitzroy, he just kind of gets sucked in to Jaws, And
it's the worst. It's the worst of all the deaths.
Yes. This is why I think, we get the awful slow motion still torpedo of, shark torpedo coming into glass, at the end, at the climactic scene. And I think he's just looking for a giant toothpick because Fitzroyce is stuck in his teeth.
Yeah, I've got this. What's his name? McCorkindale. I got this McCorkindale in here that I can't get out.
And he's still got a death grip on that grenade.
Yes. And I'm not kidding when I'm like, this is the worst death in maybe any Jaws movie, because Jaws essentially swallows him whole. He's inside
him and then chews him up.
Yeah. Like if I was trapped in Jaws, like he hadn't had any wounds or nothing. He's just like Jaws essentially swallowing him whole. At that point, I'd be like, just bite my head off, man. Come on, let's get this over with, because that is just the level of terror of just being all the way in Jaws' mouth. It just basically, I live here now. I was like, that's the worst, man. That's the worst. So I got a question for you.
Okay.
I was looking forward to doing this. And I think the easy answer here is Louis Gossett Jr., but do what you want, because I do have another candidate. Who do you think had to do the most acting in this movie? Like actually like showing acting range. And while you think on that, I will nominate my guy. I mean, Louis Gossett Jr.'s got to be up there because he's Louis Gossett Jr. But man, that guy that basically played Fitzroyce's buddy.
Yes.
When he realized that Fitzroyce didn't make it, I was like, this guy is really acting in this movie.
That's just what I was trying to think of. My first gut reaction is Louis Gossett Jr. But
great.
But when you throw out Fitzroyce's partner, I got to give it to him, because he's calm, cool, and collected, and then he's strung out, and then he's totally flipping out. And
he was crying
when Fitzroyce, when Fitzroyce bites it, Bouchard, Louis Gossett Jr. He's as some people say, Harrison Ford, he plays the same person in every movie. Louis Gossett Jr. doesn't quite do that, but in this one, he's got the same tone throughout.
No grenades.
Yes, no grenades. It's amazing that Mike can pull a 1 inch pin off of a grenade.
He did it though,
because those rings are just slightly bigger than my index finger. There's not a lot of room there, and he's getting a 1/2 inch bent rod in there. Like that's impressive. That's impressive.
All part of his plan too, which was amazing. So this there's a lot to laugh at, but or in some sense laugh with in this movie. And I think there's a real dramatic, some dramatic tensions and some jump scare moments. I know long gone in our chat, but Auburn Elvis had mentioned that whole squirt 3D syringe thing made him jump.
Yeah, it made him jump
in the theater, so that's pretty neat. Now, my biggest award for most overlooked death has got to be Calvin Bouchard, as Louis Gossett Jr. played Calvin Bouchard. His nephew, who we found out late in the game that was actually his nephew. You call him nephew.
Yeah, nephew.
That dude straight up got eaten, right? He got
spit
out, chewed up in front of everybody.
Spit out, yes.
And then they pull the pin, they kill the shark, they come to the surface, and they're like, "Yeah, the dolphins are safe." And I was like, "What about nephew? Y'all, what? You guys aren't even concerned about what happened to nephew?"
When Mike and when Mike and Catherine surface, do they even wonder if Calvin made it out? Because I had to go back and rewatch the scene a second time. I reminded, like, wait, did Calvin make it out? Okay, yeah, Calvin made it out with the other girl, but Calvin's nephew, I mean, he got chomped on 3 or 4 times, and then Jaws was like, okay, that's it, I'm done.
And there's like parts floating around, but they're like, thank God the dolphins are okay, And I love the dolphins too, but come on, man. And the nephew dude was really nice to her and helpful and all that. I felt bad for him. That leads me to basically the final shot of the movie, which is a very processed shot of the two of them, like, in the sun, and they literally like pasted 2 dolphins, like cut and paste into the screen.
I think that was supposed to be 3D. I was wondering that. I had to watch. I've watched this movie 3 times in the last 2 weeks, just picking up little things here and there, and think those dolphins were supposed to be 3D.
That makes sense
based on the way they come across the screen.
Yeah, because on the screen, I was like, I honestly thought, well, this very final shot might be one of the reasons that people didn't like this movie as much, because it's real cheesy. I guess, especially if you see it in non 3D, which I've never seen this movie in 3D. I've only seen it.
I haven't either. I would love to. I'm not sure how I could ever pull that off.
We got a chat from Omar Ellison here talking about his favorite line.
I was going to highlight that. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. You can read it if you like.
Yeah. We could be the first people to capture a great white shark. I shout, how about we just be the 100 people who kill a great white shark instead? Yeah. The whole capturing thing that's pretty ballsy. That's pretty ballsy.
Yeah, and it's funny. I got where she was coming from.
Oh yeah.
We could have a shark. And I was thinking, is it really that hard to have a shark? Haven't I been to SeaWorld and seen these sharks before? Haven't I?
I've been to SeaWorld and seen sharks. I've seen sharks at Ripley's Aquarium up in Canada, and I think it depends on the shark species.
Seriously, that makes sense.
Depends on the shark species. Because when you think of great white, they're the apex predator in the ocean, and they need a lot of room. And
good point.
They'll pretty much eat. They would probably eat anything and everything in whatever tank they are in. Eventually. That's
a good point. Hey, welcome to Marine Biology Best Under 5 episode. But that is a valid point. And then they put that shark in that tiny little like 3 foot pool.
Yeah. Oh, and when my son and I were watching this, we were looking and like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a big draw, and they put it in basically a revival tent, and they put a hand painted sign that's probably 2 by 3.
Yeah, that sign
outside. Great white shark in captivity. And I think, if this is supposed to be your big draw, you're not going to, pull Captain Brody from the first movie and paint great white shark display, and put him out on the beach. You're gonna get big neon signs and billboards.
Well, it was slapdash, and he was trying to get it out, get that new attraction going. But like you said, it's like a revival tent. It was like a 3 foot pool, which was it's clearly one of those. If you've ever been to SeaWorld before, it's clearly one of those sort of almost meant as kind of a petting zoo kind of thing, where you can. They're that low so that you can actually touch and interact.
Yeah.
I'm like, who wants to touch and interact with a great white shark? This seems like a bad idea. And that brings me to my final question. I don't think I have a whole lot. We can come to a wrap up. But I've often wondered, because like I said, every time I watch it's almost like the first time that I have to remember there's 2 sharks involved. Do you think that little shark, the littler one, do you think that's the one that killed the guy working on the gate? Or do you think that was Mama too? You think Mama killed all the people? Did Baby Shark kill any of the people?
I don't think the baby killed the quote unquote baby. I don't think it killed anybody, because remember when they pull him out, they finally find him and pull him out. Catherine looks at it, and she totally flips out, and she makes a vague reference to its bite radius. Say bite radius, but she holds her hands apart,
right?
Trying to say, no, this what we caught was the baby. The mother is inside the park.
Yes, good point. So I don't know that baby ever ate anybody.
I don't think it did.
Oh, I can't believe we almost wrapped this up without talking about the 2 dudes that were there to steal coral.
Yes, I was trying to figure out what they were doing for the life of me up until last week, when my son says, "Watch it with the subtitles on." It's like, what are they doing? So I turn on the subtitles, and they're in there poaching either coral or just underwater life. I think it was coral.
Coral, yeah. And those guys, like, they narrated everything they were doing. Like, hurry up, get the boat over the fence. Okay, now you climb over the fence. Okay, now let's get along. We see what you're doing.
Yes, we know.
I have to laugh and be a little sad that our brains work the same way. But I used the same joke that Auburn Ellis just used in the chat when I was watching this with my buddy Ezra. I actually used the same line. He said the call is coming from inside the park. I used that same line, Auburn Elvis, when I was watching with Ezra, and when she goes, the mom is in the lagoon or whatever, I said, the call is coming from inside the park. So I guess we should be both concerned that we came up with that joke independently of one another. All right. Any other thoughts of the nuts and bolts of this movie, and then we'll wrap up our finals.
No. I think we've done this one justice.
we have beat the crap. It's weird because it almost sounds like we're beating it up, but I have an affectation.
I genuinely enjoy this movie. It is not a good movie, but I genuinely enjoy it because it's out there, and I think if you remade it today, you could make it into a much better movie and definitely ditch the 3D.
The premise of it is really quite cool of this danger in the lagoon and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I do have one other thing before we give our final wrap-ups. This is new. We didn't do this on the last episode, but when I watch these movies on my Plex automatically gives me some of the blurbs from the Rotten Tomatoes for a lot of movies. And so I have 3 blurbs here. The first 2 are negative. The last one is positive. I'll put it on the screen for our folks, and I'll read it for our audio people. Maddie Lucas from a publication called From the Front Row says, and I quote, "Marred by laughable 3D effects, Jaws 3 is a difficult film to take seriously." Go ahead and say what we're all thinking, Chris.
Who is going to take this seriously?
Why were you taking Jaws 3D seriously?
Everyone went into that movie not taking it seriously. I guarantee it. No one. Absolutely no one.
If you went into this thinking it was going to be on par with like a serious thing like Jaws 1, you're crazy. It's called Jaws 3-D. Okay.
D, yeah.
Why in the world would you take it seriously? Oh, so that was one I picked, and I'm glad you and I came to the same conclusion. Here's the next one I picked, another negative one. This comes from Brian Costello from Common Sense Media, and Brian says, and I quote, "Cheesy 80s sequel has lots of violence and peril."
Oh, I just realized where that came from, so that doesn't surprise me.
Go on.
Common Sense Media is they are a very family oriented type organization.
I see.
So they're looking at it from the standpoint of, is this something you're going to sit down and watch with your kids? You know, what age is it appropriate for, et cetera, et cetera.
And that's fine. And
so now that comment makes sense.
Right. And I want to make a point too that as I'm reading this, we're not necessarily needing to beat up the person, but some of the ideas were just kind of funny. And then in this case, cheesy 80s sequel has lots of violence and peril.
Definitely.
And cheesy. I had to think, what? Yes, that's what I want out of this movie. When I look at Jaws 3D, does anybody not want cheesy 80s with violence and peril?
I mean, it's definitely cheesy, and I mean, violence and peril was pretty much a standard for 80s action and disaster movies.
I think that's what they were going for. Maybe they weren't hoping for cheesy, but it's gloriously cheesy. Mm-hmm. One more, and I like to end with a positive. We have Alan Jones from Starburst. They make a delicious candy, by the way. And he says, and I quote, "It certainly isn't the greatest film in the world. It's sloppy, full of holes, and none too convincingly acted. But for all that, it's an intermittently enjoyable popcorn entertainment."
Yep. And I thought he hit the nail on the head.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. He's not like the other guy who was going in to take it seriously. He was like, you grab your bucket of popcorn, you watch people water ski and maybe get eaten by a shark. Why not? So anyway, that's just a little feature I thought I would add. I've dabbled in that in a couple of the other movie reviews I've done for the channel. And it's just so low-hanging fruit because, like I said, my Plex just automatically puts those and I just screen grab them. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little adventure into the Rotten Tomatoes comments. All right. Time for us to wrap it up, Chris. It's time for us to give our final thoughts on the movie. And then, of course, reveal our own personal scores out of 10. As a reminder to our audience, this one has a 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb, which I think is criminal. But as usual, Chris, I will let you go first with your final thoughts and how you would score it.
I absolutely love this movie. I think it's criminal that it's a 3.7. I mean, I'm not saying it rises to a 7.5. You know, I mean, we're not in that territory, but we are definitely above a 5. Yeah, it's like that last reviewer said. It is a just stupidly fun popcorn movie. You know,
Yes.
I'm not going in to see anything serious. I'm going in to see something, you know, that, you know, depending if it's your first time, I'm going in to see something. I just want mindless entertainment at this point. You know, I don't want anything deep, which is definitely what you get here. Mindless entertainment.
and nothing too deep, maybe 90 feet deep.
Oh, 3.7 is too low. I'm going to borrow from your Action Film Face Off podcast here. You know, 5 is, you know, your average TV movie.
Yeah, good made for TV.
I'm giving this. I'm waffling between 5.5 shark fins and 6.
Okay. I'm going to mark you down for a 5.5 on. Actually, you're the one who's supposed to keep track of the scoring. Before I reveal mine, I want to welcome Slasher Fred to the chat, and of course, Courtney Holland. I didn't get a chance to shout her out earlier. Slasher Fred said this movie try this again. This movie to me feels like Friday the 13th meets Jaws because it involves a mother shark who loses her baby shark and goes on a rampage. And the original movie, Alex was played by Jeffrey Voorhees. Wow, there's a lot of coincidences. That's pretty neat. Thanks for dropping in with that, Slasher Fred. We're happy to have you here. And feel free, people in the chat, to score this movie as well as we're wrapping up the scoring here. In fact, Kathy gave it a 6 out of 10.
She'd go 6.
I echo your sentiments exactly, Chris. And I know there's some bias involved because this is a VHS I pulled off the shelf one night in the late 80s. It was the first Jaws movie I'd ever seen. It scared, 12, 13-year-old Jarrod just enough, but it's not an overtly scary slasher movie. It's just enough to scare you a little bit, and it's fun to watch. And I have that memory for it. In the end, though, I watched it this week with my buddy Ezra. We watched it at his house, side by side on the couch, and we had a blast. We riffed a little bit. We made each other laugh. We just thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think that's the point. It doesn't have to be a cinematic masterpiece to be enjoyable. And that's how I dropped my score. So 3.7 out of 10. Heck no. Jarrod's taking this one all the way to a 7 out of 10. I really
7. Wow.
To me, you got to remember though, man, for me, it's every one of my scores is based off of enjoyability and engagement. Am I engaged and am I enjoying myself? Everything else doesn't matter to me. If you can be engaged and enjoy yourself on some of the worst movies ever made just because they're so fun to watch. And that's how I'm rating it. How much fun am I having? Yes. So I am at a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm slowly recalibrating my scale here as we do this.
And that's fine. You gotta find out how these things feel to you. But that's kind of how I roll. How engaged am I and how entertained am I? And then there's some movies that just kind of have it all. When you start looking at something like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's engaging, it's entertaining, its production values are high, its acting is good. It's that's where we're talking 9s and 10s, right? That's exactly. All right. So that is pretty much it for us here on this episode. We talked longer than I thought we would. I thought we'd go about 30 minutes. We're at about 45. And I want to thank everybody who showed up in the chat to talk about Jaws 3D. You guys are awesome. We have such a good chat community. Who knows what we may be covering on the next episode? It'll be my choice, and I'll put out a call to arms over on social media on our X page, which is at LONGBOX CRUSADE. We'd love to hear from you over there and give us a suggestion. We're doing these kind of quarterly right now. So where are we at? This is August. First weekend in November is where we're going to try to
we do in November, or were we going to do it once the school year started up, or we're going to try monthly?
We may. Hey,
we can see
behind the scenes, folks. We might go monthly. We're committing to the first weekend in November for now. If we can do it more often, we will. But that's what's on the radar for now. You'll know if we're going to do it sooner because I will post on the LONGBOX CRUSADE channel on X. I will post, hey, we're taking your suggestions. So we are going to be all ears. Speaking of Longbox Crusade, I'd really love it if you checked us out on any of your social medias or at Longbox Crusade on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the places to find us. We'd love to hear from you. We love your feedbacks. We love chatting with you guys. So please do that. And of course, if you want to become a super cool Patreon member, join our Crusaders Club for as little as $1 a month at www.patreon.com/longboxcrusade. That's our Longbox Crusade stuff. Now let's talk about people who can find us personally if they want to chat with us. I am at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, and Instagram. You can check out my art at www.theyardsaleartist.com, which does include a print that I did of Jaws. I did a drawing of Jaws on a page from the book.
Yeah,
And Chris, I've talked a lot. You talk now. Where can people find you?
All right. You can find me on X at BlackBeltX21. And I'm pretty much it's all movies, TV, and just random musings from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. If you want just random thoughts from movies, TV, and music, then follow me.
We have that in common. We're basically like Gen X guys of entertainment, right? Except for some reason, Chris doesn't like the end credits theme to Eraser. We'll talk about that on another episode. It's funny. I get
not the end credits scene, the end credits song.
Theme is what I meant to say. If I said
theme. Yeah,
right.
There we go.
The funny part is I battled him about it on social media. I was like, don't you say it again. I don't remember the song at all. I was fighting for a song I don't remember. Anyways, it's like we gave you outtakes content when there was no outtakes. Thank you guys again for being here in the chat. Come check us out at Longbox Crusade, and we will see you for another episode of Best Under 5, where maybe we'll be defending some movie that you love. Thanks again for being here, everybody. Goodbye.